The Rise of Ibrahim Traore, with Captain Ibrahim Traore. Africa's future is bright. Join Ibrahim Traore on his journey to unite the continent and create a better world for all. In the scorching savannas of West Africa, a young captain named Ibrahim Traore rose to prominence, igniting a beacon of hope for a continent long plagued by foreign dominance and corruption. As the leader of Burkina Faso, Traore's vision for a sovereign and self-sufficient Africa resonated deeply with his people. With unwavering determination, Traore set out to break the shackles of neo-colonialism. He shut down French military bases, refusing to be bound by the interests of foreign powers. Instead, he charted a new course, prioritizing the needs and aspirations of his people. Under Traore's leadership, Burkina Faso underwent a transformation. He invested in gold reserves, using the country's rich natural resources to fuel development and growth. The once moribund economy began to flourish as Traore's policies empowered Burkinabés to take control of their own destiny. Agriculture, a sector long neglected, received renewed attention. Traore's government implemented initiatives to boost food production, improve irrigation systems, and support local farmers. The results were staggering. Burkina Faso became a breadbasket for the region, feeding its people and exporting surplus crops to neighboring countries. Education and healthcare, once luxuries reserved for the elite, became accessible to all. Traore's administration built schools, hospitals, and clinics, staffed by dedicated professionals committed to serving their communities. The impact was palpable. Literacy rates soared, and healthcare outcomes improved dramatically. As Traore's reputation grew, so did his influence. He became a symbol of African resistance against foreign domination, inspiring a new generation of leaders to follow in his footsteps. His message of self-reliance and sovereignty resonated across the continent, from the Horn of Africa to the Cape of Good Hope. Traore's leadership style was characterized by humility, empathy, and a willingness to listen. He walked among his people, understanding their struggles and aspirations. His door was always open to those who sought to contribute to the nation's development. Despite facing intense pressure from external forces, Traore remained steadfast in his commitment to African unity and solidarity. He forged alliances with like-minded nations, creating a network of support and cooperation that strengthened the region. Under Traore's guidance, Burkina Faso became a beacon of hope for Africa. His courage and vision inspired a sense of pride and purpose among his people. As the continent continued to evolve, one thing was clear. Ibrahim Traore had become a shining example of what African leadership could achieve when guided by principles of sovereignty, self-reliance, and a deep commitment to the people. The story of Ibrahim Traore serves as a testament to the power of courageous leadership and the indomitable spirit of the African people. As the continent continues to forge its own path, Traore's legacy will endure, inspiring generations to come. As Traore's influence grew, so did the attention from foreign powers. They attempted to undermine his authority, using every tool at their disposal, from covert operations to economic manipulation. But Traore remained resolute, drawing strength from the Burkinabe people and their unwavering support. One day, Traore received an invitation to address the African Union, an opportunity to share his vision with the continent's leaders. He stood before the assembly, his voice ringing out across the hall. "Africa is not poor," he declared. "We are being robbed of our wealth, our resources, and our dignity. It's time for us to take control of our own destiny. We must stand united, sovereign, and strong." The room erupted in applause as Traore's words resonated with the leaders and delegates. His message was clear. Africa's future would no longer be dictated by external forces, but shaped by the continent's own vision and determination. Traore's speech sparked a new era of African solidarity. Leaders from across the continent began to converge on Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso's capital, to discuss strategies for collective development and cooperation. The city became a hub of activity, as African nations worked together to build a brighter future. Under Traore's guidance, Burkina Faso became a model for African development. The country's gold reserves were used to fund infrastructure projects, from roads and bridges to schools and hospitals. The economy flourished, and the people prospered. As the years passed, Traore's legacy continued to grow. He became known as a champion of African unity, a leader who had dared to challenge the status quo and forge a new path. His name was whispered in awe by those who had long been marginalized and oppressed. One day, a young African journalist asked Traore to reflect on his journey. "Captain Traore," she said, "what drives you to continue fighting for Africa's sovereignty?" Traore's eyes sparkled with determination. "It's not just about sovereignty," he said. "It's about dignity. It's about respect. It's about recognizing the value and worth of every African life. We deserve to be treated as equals, not as subjects to be exploited and discarded." The journalist nodded, taking note of Traore's words. As she left the interview, she felt a sense of pride and purpose. She knew that Traore's message would resonate with millions, inspiring a new generation of Africans to demand their rightful place on the world stage. And so, Traore's story continued, a testament to the power of courageous leadership and the indomitable spirit of the African people. As the continent continued to evolve, one thing was clear. Ibrahim Traore had become a beacon of hope, shining brightly for all to see. As the years went by, Traore's influence extended beyond the borders of Burkina Faso. He became a respected voice on the global stage, known for his unwavering commitment to African unity and sovereignty. One day, Traore received an invitation to attend a high-level meeting at the United Nations headquarters in New York. The meeting was focused on global economic development, and Traore was determined to make his voice heard. As he stepped onto the podium, Traore surveyed the room, his eyes locking onto the representatives of the world's most powerful nations. He took a deep breath, his voice ringing out across the hall. "For too long, Africa has been treated as a periphery, a mere appendage to the global economy," he declared. "But we will no longer be held back by the chains of dependency. We will no longer be forced to adopt policies that benefit the few at the expense of the many." The room fell silent as Traore's words struck a chord. He continued, his voice growing stronger with each sentence. "We demand a seat at the table, not as supplicants, but as equals. We demand a global economic system that recognizes the value and worth of every nation, every people, and every individual." The representatives of the Western nations shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but Traore pressed on. "We will no longer be forced to accept aid that comes with strings attached. We will no longer be forced to prioritize the interests of foreign powers over the needs of our own people." The room erupted in applause as Traore's words resonated with the representatives of the Global South. His message was clear. Africa would no longer be treated as a pawn in the game of global politics. As Traore stepped down from the podium, he was met with a mixture of admiration and awe. The representatives of the world's most powerful nations knew that they could no longer ignore the voice of Africa. Traore's speech marked a turning point in global politics. The world's most powerful nations began to take notice of Africa's growing influence, and the continent's leaders were no longer seen as mere puppets, but as equals. And so, Traore's legacy continued to grow as he became a symbol of African resistance and a champion of global justice. His name was whispered in awe by those who had long been marginalized and oppressed, and his message of hope and defiance inspired a new generation of leaders to rise up and demand their rightful place on the world stage. The story of Ibrahim Traore serves as a testament to the power of courageous leadership and the indomitable spirit of the African people. As the world continues to evolve, one thing is clear: Africa will no longer be silenced, and its voice will be heard loud and clear. As Traore returned to Burkina Faso, he was greeted as a hero. The streets were filled with people, all celebrating his bravery and vision. The Burkinabe people knew that they had a leader who was not afraid to stand up for their rights and interests. Traore's speech at the UN had sparked a new era of global cooperation. Leaders from across the world began to reach out to him, seeking to build alliances and partnerships with Africa. The continent was finally being taken seriously, and Traore's leadership had played a significant role in this shift. But Traore knew that there was still much work to be done. He continued to push for greater African unity and cooperation, working closely with other leaders to build stronger, more resilient nations. One of Traore's closest allies was a young leader from a neighboring country. Her name was Aminata, and she was a brilliant strategist and diplomat. Together, Traore and Aminata worked tirelessly to build a stronger, more united Africa. Their partnership bore fruit as African nations began to work together more closely. Trade agreements were signed, infrastructure projects were launched, and cultural exchanges were established. The continent was finally starting to realize its full potential. As Traore looked out over the crowd of Burkinabe people, he felt a sense of pride and hope. He knew that there would be challenges ahead, but he was confident that Africa would rise to meet them. The continent was changing, and Traore's leadership had played a significant role in this transformation. Africa was no longer just a recipient of aid and assistance. It was a major player on the global stage, and Traore knew that this was just the beginning. He had a vision for a future Africa, where nations worked together in harmony, where resources were harnessed for the benefit of all, and where the people were free to determine their own destiny. The crowd cheered as Traore stepped forward, a smile on his face. He raised his hands, and the noise subsided. "My dear brothers and sisters," he began, "today marks a new chapter in our journey. Today we celebrate not just our past achievements, but our future possibilities." The crowd erupted in cheers once more as Traore's words resonated deep within their hearts. They knew that they had a leader who truly cared for them, and who would fight tirelessly for their rights and interests. And so, the story of Ibrahim Traore continued, a testament to the power of visionary leadership and the indomitable spirit of the African people. The future was bright, and Africa was ready to take its rightful place on the world stage. As Traore continued to speak, a sudden commotion broke out at the edge of the crowd. A group of protesters, dressed in traditional African clothing, began to chant and wave signs. But what caught Traore's attention was the leader of the group, a young woman with a fierce determination in her eyes. The woman, who introduced herself as Akua, was a member of a long-forgotten tribe that had been displaced by colonial powers. She had a message for Traore, one that would change the course of his life forever. "Captain Traore," Akua said, her voice ringing out across the crowd, "we have been watching you, and we are impressed. But we also know that you have a secret, one that could change the fate of Africa forever." Traore's curiosity was piqued. He invited Akua to meet with him in private, and she agreed. As they sat down in a quiet room, Akua revealed a shocking truth. "Captain Traore," she said, "you are not who you think you are. You are not just a Burkinabe leader, but a direct descendant of the great African king, Thomas Sankara." Traore's eyes widened in shock. He had always admired Sankara, but he had never imagined that he was related to him. "What does this mean?" Traore asked, his mind racing with questions. "It means that you have a special destiny," Akua replied. "You have the power to unite Africa and lead it to greatness. But it also means that you have a responsibility to fulfill the legacy of your ancestors." Traore was stunned. He didn't know what to say or do, but as he looked into Akua's eyes, he knew that he had to accept this new reality. With newfound determination, Traore set out to fulfill his destiny. He worked tirelessly to unite Africa, using his newfound knowledge of his ancestry to inspire and motivate his people. As the years passed, Traore's leadership transformed Africa. The continent became a beacon of hope and prosperity, and Traore's name was revered across the world. But Akua's revelation also came with a warning. Traore's newfound power and influence would attract enemies, both within and outside Africa. He would have to be careful, and he would have to be prepared to face challenges that would test his leadership and his resolve. Traore nodded, his mind racing with the implications. He knew that he had a long and difficult road ahead of him, but he was ready. He was ready to face whatever challenges came his way, and to lead Africa to greatness. And so the story of Ibrahim Traore continued, a tale of leadership, power, and destiny. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Africa would never be the same again. As Traore navigated the complex web of African politics, he found himself facing opposition from unexpected quarters. Some leaders, who had grown accustomed to the old ways of doing things, saw Traore's rise to power as a threat to their own influence. One such leader, a powerful president from a neighboring country, began to secretly undermine Traore's efforts. He spread rumors and lies about Traore, trying to turn other leaders against him. But Traore was not unaware of the plot. Akua, the young woman who had revealed his ancestry, had also taught him the ways of African diplomacy and strategy. Traore knew how to navigate the complex web of alliances and rivalries that defined African politics. With Akua's guidance, Traore began to build a network of allies across the continent. He traveled to different countries, meeting with leaders and building relationships that would serve him well in the years to come. As the opposition to Traore's leadership grew, he found himself facing a difficult decision. Should he confront his enemies head-on, or should he take a more measured approach? Akua advised Traore to take the latter approach. "A good leader knows when to fight and when to negotiate," she said. "Sometimes the greatest strength lies in restraint." Traore took Akua's advice to heart. He began to engage in diplomatic efforts, reaching out to his opponents and trying to find common ground. Slowly but surely, Traore's efforts began to pay off. Leaders who had once opposed him began to see the value in working together, and the continent began to move towards a more united future. But just as progress was being made, a new challenge emerged. A global economic downturn hit Africa hard, and many countries struggled to cope with the fallout. Traore knew that he had to act quickly to protect his people and ensure the stability of the continent. With Akua's guidance, Traore implemented a series of bold economic reforms. He invested in infrastructure, promoted trade and commerce, and worked to diversify Africa's economies. The results were remarkable, and Africa began to emerge from the economic downturn stronger and more resilient than ever. As the years passed, Traore's legacy continued to grow. He became known as one of the greatest leaders in African history, a man who had united the continent and led it to greatness. And Akua, the young woman who had revealed his ancestry, remained by his side, guiding and advising him every step of the way. Together, Traore and Akua had achieved something remarkable. They had changed the course of African history and had created a brighter future for generations to come. And as Traore looked out over the continent, he knew that he had truly fulfilled his destiny.